you know, I think we've improved it a lot overnight. So it felt good. And I mean, the time this morning didn't really reflect on how good the car felt. So hopefully we can be right in the mix.
Yeah, he's one of those that drivers are mentioning in the paddock as one of the guys to beat, Marco Andretti. Now let's go to Jamie Little, who's with another second-generation driver.
And Graham Rahal's dad, Bobby Rahal, won the inaugural race here back in 1986. You see the old car right there. What is it like for you, Graham, racing here, knowing that your dad was such a big part of history?
Well, it's Toronto's a great event. I mean, obviously the family's fortunate Dad won the first, but now it's my turn, right? So I have to do the same. And unfortunately, this weekend we've struggled a little bit. We got a little bit of work to do, but we're much better this morning, and the guys are working awfully hard.
Now, this is the first race since the end of 2009. You're back with Newman Haas. How did this reunion come about for you guys?
Well, really, it's all in thanks to Quick Trim. They came on board yet again after being with us at Indy. And I had talked a little bit with Bernie Haas, who runs Newman Haas now, and Bernie wanted to do some stuff, and so financially for everybody it was better to be here. It was a team I was familiar with. They gave me my engineer, my chief mechanic. A lot of the same people I worked with last year are back with me now, and so it was a place that we felt we could kind of fit right in and start where we kind of left off. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked that way yet, but we know that we'll be here for 6 races. Mid-Ohio is unsponsored right now, but we have 6 races, and we won't be at Edmonton or Kentucky, but we picked the best ones.
You make the most of it today. The car is getting better, and he hopes to do what his dad did, go to victory lane. Marty?
All right, thanks, Debbie. We always like to keep track of people, what they're doing off the track, and it was hard to miss last Wednesday when Danica Patrick walked the red carpet and was one of the presenters at this year's annual ESPY Awards. It was a great show. She looks a little bit different there. She's back in her usual costume with Rick DeBrule here at the track.
Well, Danica Patrick looking a little different right now as opposed to how she looked at the ESPYs. Probably a little more comfortable. But let's talk about the race this weekend. Qualified 12th, your best on the road course this year. Are you comfortable with this track?
Yeah, definitely different than from the ESPYs. That day I was trying not to eat too much for my dress, and today I'm trying to eat as much as I can put in my mouth, and I'm not hungry. Anyway, yeah, it was a much better day for the GoDaddy car. It really was. We've really, you know, made a step forward this weekend, and we got inside the top 12. We weren't able to really capitalize after that. We had used both our red sets to get in. So, you know, hopefully we can keep this going and, you know, be fast enough in practice that we can save one of those red sets to be able to, you know, work on advancing out of that second group or up that second group. But it has been a better weekend.
Last year you moved up 12 spots, qualified 18th, finished 6th. All right, how easy is it going to be to move up from that starting position you've got? Well,
yeah, the further up you start, the harder they are. So, but you know, a lot of times the most amount of trouble you stay out of too. So we did you know, the team did a good job with strategy last year, and we pitted early and caught the yellow. So I guess we'll just see how the start goes and see where we're at and see if we should, you know, pit early or pit late. It just depends on how it's going. It's one of those interesting races for strategy because, you know, the stints are 30 laps long and the race is only 80 laps, so it's 2 pit stops with some leeway, so it makes it interesting.
All right, Danica's very good at staying out of trouble. Hopefully she can pull it off again this weekend. Marty?
Thank you, Rick. Also earlier this week, the unveiling of the brand new strategy for the future car of IndyCar, and the Dallara chassis was selected.
And new CEO Randy Bernard put together a team, an advisory team, to help him make the decision on this new chassis. And the great portion there is the new Dallara safety cell that everybody will have. And on top of that, then other manufacturers can go ahead and build the wings and the side pods. So, Marty, I think starting in 2012, we are now going to have some very different looking cars, and maybe some radical looking cars. And it's maybe something that we need in the series to bring us back to what we had maybe years ago when the rules were wide open. Now you're going to have a situation where there's going to be some different looking cars and some cars that maybe fans will get behind because they will be radically different.
Well, as we well know, you can't please everybody, but your overall impressions, you seem to be pretty positive on this.
Very positive, because I mean, safety is foremost, and that's what they tried to do here. They wanted to make sure it was a very safe car. They wanted to reduce cost. They wanted to make sure that it was fan friendly because it was going to be different, and I think they really met all their goals with this new board. They did a great job. They have some real heavy hitters in there making those decisions, and I think they really addressed all those issues news. Now the teams are anxious to get the cars late next year to get ready for 2012.
Base cost supposed to be about 45% less than the current product out on the track. What about the engine combination? What do you think about that?
And that's going to change too, because right now we're running a V8 engine, and now we're going to go to a 4 or a 6-cylinder engine, which is going to be turbocharged. Going back to the days when I drove, when we had turbocharged engines, 550 to 700 horsepower. So, and the cars will also be lighter. So a little bit more speed, and maybe some, I don't want to say new track records at Indianapolis, but maybe the speeds will be bumped up again.
So that's in 2012. We still have a lot to go, but let's talk about the history of the cars. Let's take you back through a bit of the timeline. And where I was told by the crew to tease you about this. I'm supposed to ask you what the Marmon Wasp actually drove like.
Well, thank you very much, but that might be more your area. Thank you very much, Tom.
Of course, Ray Haroon winning the first Indy 500 in the Marmon Wasp.
And the Miller chassis, it won 6 Indy 500s, and 2 of them were with Louis Meyer, who's aboard the car that we see in the picture.
And then as we moved a little bit further, the old front-engine roadsters, the Watson Roadster, of course, that's Parnelli Jones sitting behind the wheel at the Brickyard.
And in the mid to late 60s with a rear engine car, and there you see the Coyote with A.J. Foyt aboard. That was his 1967 winning car.
And a personal favorite of mine. Anything that Dan Gurney built, I always loved. And in the 70s, the Gurney Eagle, and of course that is Bobby Unser.
In the 1980s, and here is a Pennzoil Penske machine of Rick Mears, who won in 1988 aboard that car. And Marty, that's the era that I start to remember. Thanks.
All right. Hey, as you can see from high above, a good crowd heading towards their seats. Cars are on the grid, and drivers are strapping in. And that means when we come back, we'll get the Compan to start engines and go racing here on the streets of Toronto.
ESPN's coverage of the IZOD IndyCar Series at Toronto on ABC, presented by IZOD. Mother's Polish. There's no shine like Mother's. And Honda, the engine supplier for the IZOD IndyCar Series.
As we told you, it is an absolutely gorgeous day here in Toronto, and the crowd, as we mentioned, making their way to their seats around this 1.75-mile layout. And let's talk a little bit about that weather. As you can see, it's getting a little warmer. It's been up into the 80s, a little bit earlier down trackside. Alex Tagliani, of course, one of the Canadians. He is a huge Montreal Canadiens fan, but did not want to insult the Toronto Maple Leaf fan, so he's got one jersey of each. And you know exactly what that's all about, Scott.
Well, being a Toronto native, definitely Toronto is your team. And I have to say that I did lose a bet with Alex earlier in the year between Toronto and Montreal. It was for dinner, and he's not remembered, so I won't tell him.
There are the stats. Let's show you what this 1.75-mile layout looks like as we start out from Google Earth.
And Marty, the streets here in downtown Toronto are very bumpy, but they've made a very neat 11-turn circuit here through the Canadian National Exhibition in that 1.75-mile distance, as you said. And going down here into turn 1, it's a great passing zone. As we ride aboard now with Paul Tracy, just watch him coming out of turn 1, headed towards turn 2, and then he'll take that long run down that backstretch towards turn 3. And watch the Firestone telemetry. The miles per hour are going up. His changing gears are on the lower side. He keeps his hands on the steering wheel now with the new paddle shifters we're using this year. Hard on the brakes into turn 3. A great passing zone. Watch for a lot of action there again here this year. Out of turn 3, very slow first gear, just about 40 miles an hour. Accelerate very quickly up through the gears, all the way quickly to 100 miles an hour. Hard on the brakes for turn 5, and then accelerate towards turn 6, which is a right-hander. Coming from 6, go through 7, down into 8. A very bumpy section of the racetrack again. Usually a lot of action there. We're exiting 8 right now towards 9. Watch Paul's hands from pavement to concrete to pavement. And this is very much similar to all the turns here at Toronto. Going through turn 11, very high-speed circuit. A lot of people having a problem with their cars there. And a run back down the front stretch towards the Princess Gates.
And that's one lap. And here we are looking at turn number 1. And all the guys are talking about the concrete patches, that it is so slick. every time you hit them.
And the grip is not consistent, so getting something to work for your race car is very difficult. All the drivers are telling me it's a huge compromise here to get your car to work. It's not great at all turns, so today they know that they have to be on top of it without trying to overdo it and make a mistake.
There's turn 3. You'll remember it by the Budweiser banners. Again, concrete on the inside. They're a real difficult spot. This is where Paul Tracy and Elio Castroneves had their incident last year. Okay, there's Dario Franchitti. Now, we have just been informed by race officials they made their investigation.